Hi guys, how's it going? Welcome to another RuneScape video. So today I'm going to be parked at Fleshcrawler, so if you're one of the few people who watches the videos and doesn't just listen to them, then I suggest not watching and just listening. For some reason, some people have commented it in the past on my videos that they think the visual aspect of my videos are boring, and that is true. You're not supposed to watch them, you're supposed to listen. If you want to watch something, you can watch my face. That's why the face cam's here. So I don't necessarily have any hot RuneScape topics this week as I usually talk about in these videos, but instead I'm just going to have a little bit of a reflection on my experience with this game and other things I've been thinking about. Now, for me, starting off getting a 99 was very, very difficult, and I think it's probably the same experience for a lot of people. I personally had to push myself pretty hard to get that first 99. After that, I kind of had to adapt myself to understanding how exactly you're supposed to get a 99, or how I suppose most players approach getting a 99. So I definitely had to shift my perspective on the way I think about getting long-term goals done, and at the time a 99 was quite a lot. However, I think what eventually had me understand the nature of skilling a little bit better was thinking of it in terms of a long-term competitive grind rather than I have a goal and I'm going to push through to get this goal. I was thinking of it more towards there are other people also competing on this leaderboard for this metric EHP, which I thought was super interesting. It was a more or less a even playing field. You know, you play 1 hour, you play one focused hour, and you get 1 EHP, assuming you're doing the most efficient method, obviously. While I'm not saying this is entirely a bad thing, which I suppose there is some good parts to it and some bad parts to it. The good in EHP, in focusing on EHP as opposed to I have a goal, I need to finish it, is that you will likely find the grind a bit easier as long as you have the motivation to compete, sort of. I think the competitive part of the game is super interesting at the time. Back when I first started in 2015 on this account, no one was even close to even trying to get maxed free to play, and I thought it would be something really interesting to challenge myself and also just to be the first. So I really pushed myself to get through that. There were some parts that were pretty easy, but also some parts weren't. Like, I absolutely hated mining, I absolutely hated making GP. So buyables, you know, they're easy skills, but I think I had to make like 300 mil GP for 99 prayer. To do that, I did double nats through the abyss on my alt, and that was, you know, a couple thousand hours or two. I can't remember exactly. And then prayer in itself was a massive grind for me. I never done anything that long. You know, 43k an hour, took a couple months and managed to finish off max free to play. And no one did it for another couple of years, which was really awesome to think back on. And I think the more negative part of it is that you kind of lose that perspective you had on the game initially. I'm not sure how other people who play more casually feel about this game. I think if I played in 2007 and I logged into this game today for the first time, I would maybe have a similar mindset towards the game than I do now. But since I've played for so long and gone through so many tough situations in the game, I'm kind of like numb to the grind at this point. I don't really feel the same way I did killing goblins for an hour in Lumbridge as I do killing flesh crawlers for an hour, for example. I mean, obviously. But I think part of that is you're kind of also just giving up on that nostalgic aspect to the game that was so intriguing at the time. We're all 8 years old, like I was when I first started playing, or however old you were at the time. But I think, I'm not saying it's a good thing or it's a bad thing to play competitively and think about the game in terms of EHP and that sort of thing. They're two entirely different things, both fun though. But I suppose the one sacrifice is that you lose that nostalgia. At least for me, I feel like I've lost that for the majority of my view of the game. And I think now, after a certain point, I can't really pinpoint it precisely, but I started to feel like I'm not as competitive as I used to be. Obviously, I'm not really interested in going for records anymore or being the first to anything. I've still got 200 mil woodcutting to finish. I want to finish that, of course. I'm going to keep playing the game regardless, but I think I don't feel that same drive as I used to. I think maybe a lot of the seasoned players also feel that way, and that's probably why a lot of the high-level people from the original part of old school RuneScape started to dwindle down and don't play anymore. But yeah, and I don't feel the same drive. I don't want to be the first to complete 200 mil all free to play. I don't really want to put myself through that. There are much better players out there. You know, I do want to complete 200 mil all free to play eventually. I think it'll be a fun little side grind basically while I'm doing other things in real life, and playing other games, whatever the case may be. I tend to direct my attention towards anything I'm interested in. I'd rather do that than put myself through something I don't really want to do. I'm really not trying to discourage anyone from playing RuneScape. I think it's a great game, and I think if you have the drive to complete whatever goal it may be on your account right now, then you feel like putting pressure on yourself to complete this thing, giving up on other things that you might find enjoyable in order to complete this goal in whatever time period you've set for yourself, then I highly encourage it. It's something you want to do, and sometimes you have to sacrifice a little bit of things in order to get things done. So I 100% feel like that's an okay thing to do. I'm not saying like everyone should just do what they feel like doing all the time. There's obviously beneficial things to that and non-beneficial things to that. And on the topic of EHP, I just want to say I don't really feel like I'm qualified to speak on EHP much anymore. I have my own opinion, and I think there are other people that have their opinion. You know, it is what it is. This is how I feel about the game, and this is how I feel that EHP was and should continue to be, but other players have kind of a differing opinion these days. So some of you may be familiar with this concept already, but just to give some context, I think there are some players in this game that feel that EHP should be the maximum rate you can get and the maximum efficient method you can possibly do, regardless of how feasible it is long term or GP wise, whatever it is. Doesn't matter if it will in fact break your wrist doing it for 3,000 hours or whatever period of time. These players feel that this should be the EHP rate, and you should never be able to get one-to-one EHP. So when EHP first started becoming a thing, it was on crystalmathlabs.com. A few of you probably have heard of it at this point. It was one of the first tracking sites before Temple or Wise Old Man, I think is the other one people are using these days. It was pretty solid at the time. There were problems with it, of course, but it was what everyone used. There was no other tracking site, I think, really. So they came up with this way of comparing each other. And it wasn't really EHP at the time. It was, but it was more trying to estimate a time played for each player. Like how much time has this person put into skilling, essentially. It wasn't necessarily efficient hours played. It was time played is what it's labeled on CML to this day, which it might have like an EHP beside it now, but initially that's what it was. So to get an estimate of a player's time played, they would essentially take what the majority of players were doing at the time for the maximum rate. It wasn't something like wrist breaking like we have different methods these days that are a lot of multi-skilling. It was more so what the majority of the higher level community was doing for these methods. And then it was making an estimate based on that. So if you did decide to do these much harder methods or much more expensive methods, then you would get slightly over EHP, which is fair. Or if you're just playing very, very well, you'd get over EHP. And I've always treated EHP that way when I've helped design it over the years, ever since like 2015, I don't remember exactly, but I've been one of the main people to put together EHP until this most recent EHP update. I had no part in it, so a lot of those methods kind of reflect that. They're all way too hard, in my opinion, to be doing these methods long term and these kind of rates. I think they're not great. And I understand people feel differently about that, but I think that a metric like that should be the case. Then you should have an entirely different metric for it and call it maximum efficient rates or something. EHP, of course, is kind of not the correct term if you're talking about time played. It should have a name change. Maybe EHP should be this higher metric, this higher standard of a metric, and time played should just be something else that people go by. I think when I'm looking at my Temple page and seeing how much I've played this week, I don't want to see a number that's a third of what I've actually put in for the week. That's just kind of silly to me. Even if I am playing maximum efficiently, I'm still not getting one-to-one. I think that's not my favorite way of looking at tracking sites. I want to get a good estimate of what I'm looking at playing per week, but I'm kind of starting to feel like my opinion doesn't matter too much, so I'm backing off. I really don't care that much, as I've stated. I'm just kind of more so focused on gaining XP over a long period of time. It's kind of what I enjoy doing at this point, and ever since I started taking on university seriously, it's been like that for a few years. I haven't really had too much competitive drive as I used to back in the day, but that's okay. Going for more short-term competitive grinds like records or just competitions that certain groups of players have held, they have been quite fun, and I don't regret doing any of it. It was what I could could do at the time. It wasn't a very long-term commitment. It was just weeks. A 1-week competition is typically how the format goes. I participated in several of those throughout my academic career during breaks. That was quite fun. I don't regret doing any of that. It was a lot of fun, and you know, having those records on Temple and other tracking sites forever is really cool as well. Doing those things by themselves, they're not fun. Like, you have to push yourself through it. You have to really commit. If you feel like sleeping in, you can't. You have to sleep 3 hours a night or 4 hours a night, whatever you're limiting yourself to. So, and you can't really expect 1-to-1 unless you're an absolute beast, which there are some players out there that any second they're awake, they're getting 1-to-1 basically. There are players out there like that, and it's really impressive. So I don't hold myself to that high standard. I think it's just kind of something to challenge yourself is always pretty enjoyable. Once you complete it, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I did that. I never would have expected to do whatever you were going for. And so moving on, I'm not really sure how long I've talked for at this point, but I did want to bring up a couple other topics, and I know I typically don't like to discuss things outside of RuneScape on these videos. Just, at least I like to try to limit it to some extent, but I also feel like it's worth sharing at this point, is just because I've got other things that I'd rather do. Right now, IRL, I'm kind of working freelance at this point. I've got a couple projects I've worked on after graduating, so I'm working with a client right now, and it's pretty fun. I really need to dedicate more time to it, so the videos might be on hold for a while. It might just be whenever I feel like making a video, but there definitely still will be other things that will be uploaded, like the free-to-play podcast that'll be coming out once Forestry Part 2 comes out. We'll definitely get together and talk about that and all the other major issues and players in the game have that are kind of destroying the game, and they don't really realize it. It's kind of unfortunate. That's what's going on. I'm also kind of getting into, I know a lot of you already know this, but kind of getting into GeoGuessr. I'm a bit addicted, to say the least. They recently had a World Cup. It was pretty enjoyable to watch, insanely intense. I think even if you don't like GeoGuessr, it's not really about the game, it's real life game, which is kind of crazy. Looking at real life and making a video game out of it's kind of sick, in my opinion. So yeah, I've casually been uploading videos on my other YouTube channel, somewhere in my channels option on my page, but I'll also link it in the description. I've just kind of been casually uploading things. If you guys are interested, I also did play a few competitive games with Verf. I'm sure a lot of you know him. Also is a GeoGuessr enjoyer. So I have a few videos up on that channel of me and him versus some other higher level players in the game, which is pretty fun to watch, fun to play too. So yeah, that's probably going to be about it for today. I want to say, like, this is not me giving up on skilling. I'm still playing. I'm still enjoying skilling. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm just kind of more so admitting to myself that, like, I don't really think of the game as the way I used to. I think I'll ever get back into playing 11 hours a day or whatever I averaged for a few years back in the day. So I have no intention of doing that. I think most of you probably know that at this point. But so yeah, thank you guys for watching once again. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Take care.